G'day guys and gal, the Horus Heresy was a super shit time to be a loyalist. They lost worlds, primarchs and even their emperor. Everything sucked and nowhere was safe. However, after the heresy, it was the traitors' turn to enter the come zone. Legions of vengeful, highly motivated loyalists hunting down and massacring the traitors with extreme prejudice, driving them out of nearly every nook and cranny. There is a reason why chaos took 10,000 years to become a threat again, and it was because of the Great Scouring. But the Scouring wasn't entirely one-sided. The traitors were not a toothless creature, and they still managed to deal some mortal blows to the loyalists even as they were driven back into the Eye of Terror. And with the Scouring series about to kick off, I thought it'd be a great time to dive into the broad strokes of the events after the heresy to get you lubed up and ready for when the series kicks off. Before we get started, you know what I'm going to say. The Big EV2 baby. Sales continue to soar as we are down to our last 2 weeks of the Big EV2 launch before he is gone. I had a lot of people emailing me about missing out on the first Big E years ago, so you do not want to be one of those people this time round. I can confidently say this is the most awesome model of 2025 in my biased opinion. 5 head variants, including 3 new helmet variants, improvements to details and proportions, and you can get him in 4 different scales. From tabletop for all your wargaming needs, art scale for those that want to paint him and enter into something like a painting competition, 112 for those of you that like statues, and we have 2 1/6 scales remaining, for those that want an insane, super limited edition Goliath. Not to mention we also have about 10 pre-painted biggies left, pro-painted, already varnished and assembled. The sale will last until the end of the month and then it's dunzos. Also, don't forget we are giving away an epic Biggie V2 diorama via Dice Dioramas, alongside a ton of other Biggie prizes. The link to join Dice and check that out will be below. Today we'll go over the Great Scouring, detailing the context for it, who was involved, the major events that occurred, and what was the end result. Let's get into it. When the heresy ended with the Emperor killing Horus and being mortally wounded in turn, everyone was in disarray. However, the traitors were hit harder. With Horus gone, the warp was violently thrown back, leaving many traitor marines depowered and confused. The loyalists counterattacked from many angles: the palace, the hidden phalanx, and the dormant battle fleet Solar, whilst Guilliman also arrived and engaged the traitor fleets. During this counterattack, an absolute shitload of traitors died, most notably the World Eaters, Death Guard, and Sons of Horus, and by this point, the other traitor legions had left the siege or only had a small force present. This is why, during the Scouring, the World Eaters, Death Guard, and Sons of Horus barely feature. There was very few of them still left alive. It's a miracle any survived, with the law literally stating that if there were 30% more loyalists still alive on Terra when Horus died, not a single traitor would have survived to leave Terra. Now, although Horus rushed the heresy, his forces still conquered many Imperial worlds. These worlds assisted his supply chain and provided fresh recruits, but he hadn't established a new empire. The goal was always to rush to Terra, take the throne, and then become the new emperor of mankind from there. So the traitors didn't have many solid strongholds to retreat to and regain their strength. To make matters worse for the traitors, the Lion went on a genocidal campaign against the various traitor homeworlds. He blew up Barbarous and Chemos, with the other traitor homeworlds already been destroyed or abandoned. Now, a lot of the current Scouring lore is quite old and is open to being subtly retconned in the new Scouring series, but much like how the Horus Heresy fleshed out the setting rather than retconned all the lore, I do think the broad strokes will still apply. Now, just after the siege, there was a period of time where the loyalists and traitors could regather themselves. The Lion and Lehman arrived on Terra after Guilliman, and a big argument broke out between the Primarchs on if the legions could remain intact or needed to be broken into chapters to ensure no one man could wield so much power again. This internal dispute allowed the traitors to dig in and prepare for the loyalist counterattack. The debate over splitting up the legions would rage for most of the Scouring, only really being decided on later. Each of the loyalists sort of went off to do their own thing. The Lion didn't actually do much during the Scouring, from what we know, as after Terra he went straight to Caliban, attacked his now traitorous homeworld, and then was knocked into a coma and vanished. Guilliman put in a huge shift during the Scouring. He attacked the Alpha Legion and killed what appeared to be Omegon, but was likely just a body double. They then went on to attack Olympia alongside the Imperial Fists, resulting in the Iron Warriors nuking their own world instead of letting it fall into loyalist hands. Any world that was too corrupted was subject to relentless exterminatus by the loyalists. They would not tolerate even a speck of chaos in their new Imperium. However, the Scouring also presented unforeseen problems. Many Xeno empires that were driven off during the Crusade had come back and were wreaking havoc on the newly weakened Imperium. Many other human worlds or systems had rebelled against both Horus and the Emperor, seeing this as an opportunity to reclaim their sovereignty from a weakened Imperium. So the Scouring was a full-on chaotic war of hot-headed loyalists ripping through Xenos, independent systems, and traitors alike. Now, I do wish that I could just say that it was awesome revenge for the loyalists and that they dominated, but that isn't really the case. Perturabo and Rogel Dawn had their ultimate showdown during the events of the Iron Cage, where Rogel was baited into attacking a vicious Iron Warrior stronghold, losing most of his remaining legion in the fighting due to his hot-headiness, only surviving because of Guilliman arriving to bail him out. It was after after this that Rogel finally conceded to having the legions broken into chapters, but even worse, when Guilliman faced Fulgrim and the Emperor's children, who at this point were one of, if not the most powerful of the traitor legions due to them taking low casualties on Terra and still having their Primarch active, Fulgrim slit G-Man's throat and put him into his 10,000-year coma, taking the Loyalist's most effective Primarch off the board. At a similar time, Jagadai, who didn't seem to be doing too much during the Scouring, chased some Dark Elder into the webway and was never seen again. So Loyalist Primarchs started vanishing or dropping like flies. It did go both ways though. Conrad Kurz was assassinated / god-assisted suicide from a Calidus assassin, before the Night Lords were then attacked by the Ultramarines and scattered, losing most of their power. Khan went full retard mode and drove the World Eaters into a vicious war with the Emperor's children, breaking up the few remaining World Eaters into minor warbands. Never go full retard. What about Corvus and Vulcan? Well, Vulcan wanted to rebuild his legion, so he kept the Salamanders out of most of the Scouring. It is said that he personally hunted Fabius Bile to try put an end to the mad genius and his fucked up experiments, while Corvus went full emo mode, hiding in his tower sulking for a year before jumping into the Eye of Terror and hunting traitors, giving us that awesome showdown where Demon Bird Corvus bitch slaps Demon Prince Lorgar and forces him to run away. Vulcan was actually pretty traumatized after the heresy. The tortures of Conrad, the loss of most of his legion, the price he had to pay to keep Malcador alive on the throne, and then hearing about what the Emperor's children did on Terra. It really broke him. After his hunt for Fabius ended in failure, he went into exile for over 1,000 years and returned for the events of the War of the Beast. But that is neither here nor there. Lehman Russ also went into exile, going into the Eye of Terror in what many believe was an attempt to find and rescue Ishar, who was one of the best options to potentially healing the Emperor. At a similar time to Lehman's disappearance, Valdor also vanished. As the two legends are heavily connected via their spears, it's no coincidence that they vanished around the same time. Most tragically of all, towards the end of the Scouring, Dawn led a suicidal attack on a much larger Chaos fleet, boarding their ship and being seemingly torn apart and killed, although only his hand was recovered, with many still believing Dawn is alive somewhere. So if you're wondering how the Imperium went from this enlightened, science-focused empire of reason to a superstitious fuckfest of dogma and oppression, it's because none of the Primarchs stuck around. They struck out at the traitors and purged them from the Imperium, with all of them either falling in battle, vanishing, or going into exile, leaving only baseline humans to run things. However, it was enough. The traitors were pushed all the way back into the Eye of Terror, the only place the Loyalists couldn't scour them from. Mortarion, Magnus, and Angron had already been banished during the siege, so they were still stuck in the warp. Horus and Alpharius were dead, Omegon was in hiding, Lorgar was driven into his tower, and Fulgrim was sick of the heresy and just wanted to jerk off. And I think Perty was just gaming or something. The traitor legions had been smashed during the heresy, smashed during the Scouring, and then they started a huge civil war with each other in the Eye of Terror. It's no wonder that even with an Imperium with no Primarchs and a ton of issues, didn't have any problems with Chaos for 10,000 years. Even during Georges Van Dy's Age of Apostasy or the War of the Beast, two events that nearly ended the Imperium, Chaos was still silent, as even at its weakest, the Imperium was still stronger than Chaos. It took 10,000 years of Abaddon reuniting the traitors, as well as rearming and recruiting for them to be a threat once again. The Scouring was vicious, and I guarantee there will be some juicy lore in it. The broad strokes I just gave are only what we know happens. It would be awesome to see what Lehman got up to when he went to the Eye of Terror. What was the context of Jagadai going into the webway, and what then happens to him in there? I'm also hoping, although the Scouring will still be grimdark, that it does give us moments of satisfaction for the Loyalists after everything they had endured. The first Scouring book, Ashes of the Imperium, will drop this year, and likely will handle the immediate aftermath of the Siege of Terra. I'm expecting a fair bit of politics and clashing between those that weren't at Terra during the siege and those that were. I can imagine a lot of resentment there, especially from Rogel, who was mentally broken from the experience. I deliberately haven't dived too deep today into those major plot points that we know about, as there is a very good chance most will have their details changed, new details will be added in, and entire sections could be completely retconned, so it would be confusing as fuck. I just wanted to butter up your butthole a bit and give you some context in preparation for the Scouring series. Exciting time to be a 40k fan. Then again, every day is an exciting day to be a 40k fan. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up the Biggie V2. The public sales come, and so should you. Hit the subscribe button and hit the real subscribe button for more scoured content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.